next MonsterVerse movie is still a long ways away. So now's the perfect time to have some fun with what monsters from the MonsterVerse and from some of the classics that could show up in Supernova. There's going to be some familiar faces and maybe some not so familiar ones. Just know that this is all for fun and not something to take all that serious. That being said, sit back and get ready, let's get to it. So to make this a little bit more simple, we're going to have 4 separate branches of monsters that will help us get an idea of who could show up. These branches are the major returning titans, the lesser returning titans, the plausible returning titans, and the plausible classic kaijus that could show up. After we fill these out, we will then move on to the category of likeliness that they could actually show up in Supernova. Before we fill out the branches though, a bunch of you aren't subscribed, so what are you waiting for? Let's start with the major returning titans, since this is by far the most obvious, I think. In this branch, we have Kong, and the one and only undisputed champion and king of the monsters, Godzilla. There's also Mothra, Shimo, Zuko, and the entirety of the Kong species that fills out the remainder of this branch. I'll get to the likelihood of these individuals appearing in Supernova here in a bit, but for now, let's talk about the lesser titans that could return. These are more or less at this point honorable mentions, but let's talk about them anyway. We have the Warbat, the Wart Dogs, and of course, the Skullcrawlers. I know there's other lesser titans in the monsterverse like the Hellhawks and Drowned Vipers for example, but these are all interchangeable monsters that could very easily be replaced with the next fodder they come up with. These next 2 branches are where the fun starts to really begin, I think. There's a lot of titans from the monsterverse that could return in the next movie, but we've narrowed it down to this small list based on recent appearances, popularity, and plausibility. Out of all the titans from Godzilla King of the Monsters, we feel there's only about 2 of them that could actually return. Rodan, due to his popularity and position on the Titan Totem Bowl, and Behemoth, because Legendary can't seem to let him go, and everybody loves him. Then we have Tiamat, yep, the same Titan Godzilla obliterated in the New Empire, and I'll explain why she might be able to still come back later on. Then there's Abaddon, and you guessed it, Ghidorah, or at least a version of himself. But not all plausibles are returning MonsterVerse stars, some could be icons of old. Here are the classic Toho Kaiju that could finally make their appearance in the MonsterVerse, and like I said, I'll talk about how likely that is here in a little bit, so stay tuned. We have Space Godzilla, Gigan, Destroya, Orga, and Jet Jaguar. These are all rumored, teased, or very obviously begged for by the fans, and Supernova may just be their time to shine. Now that we have the titans we will use for this tier-based video, let's reveal our categories. We have the guaranteed to show up, we have the likely to show up, then there's the possible ones that could show up, next is the unlikely ones that could, and lastly the ones where it's just impossible. Do you guys have any guesses yet for which titan goes where? Well, let's see how close you are. In the guaranteed category, we have Godzilla and Kong. When the movie has both names in the title, of course they're gonna both show up in this movie for a 3rd time now. Some fans love that, some want a Godzilla only movie. Nonetheless, the Atomic Lizard and Big Monkey are about to get it on again. The next categories are a little bit more interesting, so let's move on. In the likely category, I would place Mothra here. This would be the first time a classic Toho monster would make a true return to the MonsterVerse franchise. I'm not counting Ghidorah's skull and spirit from Godzilla vs. Kong, just so you guys know. I'm talking about full-on physical reappearances. There's even evidence, or at least a very crude hints at Mothra returning, when one of the actresses for Supernova sent out an Instagram story with the 2 twin girls emoji. In Godzilla talk, this can really only hint at one thing, the Mothra fairies. So with that, Mothra is likely to return. With Kong now ruling the Hollow Earth tribe of his kind, with Shimo and Zuko by his side, I feel like if Kong shows up, the others have to as well. We've got no information on what role Kong will play in this new story, and that role will dictate the roles of these other titans, so as of right now, they may only show up as quick cameos or in the backgrounds of certain shots, but hey, that's still technically in the movie. Moving on now, from the likely category, we now are at the possible category. We'll start with the Skullcrawlers. These monsters have made consistent, if small, appearances ever since they were first seen in Kong Skull Island. With a species that can reproduce quickly and even be cloned in this universe now, it's possible for the Skullcrawler to appear yet again, I think. These movies need bad titans to turn into meat piles anyway, right? Now, most of you have been waiting for this one. Space Godzilla makes his way into this category as well. Damn near every hint has told us Space Godzilla, in some sense or new form, will be the big bad guy in the Supernova movie. But until it's officially confirmed by Legendary, he has to stay in the possible only category. Right now it makes sense that he's gonna show up, but we truly don't know. Next we have another interesting one, the cyborg Gigan. There's little reason to think Gigan could make an appearance in this movie, but fans have not stopped from starting a rumor that the bright light in the center of the Supernova logo looks a lot like Gigan's Cyclops eye. And I have to tell you guys, they aren't wrong for thinking that. They do look pretty dang similar. And like Space Godzilla, Gigan comes from space, which is being heavily used to give hints at Supernova's plot, so it all kinda adds up. So in Supernova, Gigan is possible, even if it's kind of a stretch. Most of you probably didn't expect Jet Jaguar on this list, but here's why I think he's possible. The Monsterverse has been hinting at Jaeger-sized mechs for some time now. And while the classic Jet Jaguar would be kind of out of place in the Monsterverse, that doesn't mean that a newer, more serious take on the character couldn't be thrown into it. The legendary Sam Neill even made this post a while back showing a mech behind him, saying that it's his co-star or something, and Alistair swears that's him hinting at Jet Jaguar. I'm not so sold yet, but what do you guys think? Moving on, I need you guys to brace yourselves. Some feelings may be hurt here, but if so, oh well. These are the unlikely titans to appear. The first one stings a little, I'm not gonna lie. Doug. This was really only ever a joke titan that somehow grew to popularity way higher than anyone making these movies ever anticipated. But now, with the last two films' director, Adam Wingard, gone, the creator of Doug in a sense, I find it very unlikely that we get another random Doug cameo in Supernova. It just wouldn't make sense, unless... This next unlikely titan isn't any easier to swallow. You'd probably get a hairball. A lot of you really want Behemoth to make a comeback. But here's the thing. If the new Empire's climactic battle that took place in Behemoth's backyard in Rio didn't have the big hairy elephant sloth, then why would any other movie? We don't have to like it, but it's unlikely we're ever gonna see Behemoth again in a live-action movie. Next is Tiamat. Remember how I said she had a chance to somehow return? Well, she actually does, it's just very unlikely. In her Monsters Declassified comic, it was stated how she was somehow not fully dead thanks to this strange pink substance. Could she be putting herself back together like we've seen Ghidorah do? Maybe, but it's unlikely still. I wouldn't expect to see her, maybe she'll be mentioned though. Next we have Rodan. It would make total sense for Rodan to show up again in the Monsterverse, since last we heard, he was nesting in a volcano on the surface of the planet, and we know how this character is always ready to get in on the action. But there's little reason to bring Rodan back other than to please his longtime fans, I feel like. I'd love to see it, it would make a ton of sense, but it's just not likely for Rodan to return. Next we have Abaddon. Some of you might not have never even heard of this titan, and that's because this spider didn't really hit home that well in Kong's Survival Instinct, the video game that came out last year. But for some reason, they did give this monster a role in a video game, and a role in a Monsters Declassified short story, so that does imply Legendary has more plans for Abaddon, but I just wouldn't count on seeing it in a movie. Lastly, we have Ghidorah, actually Mecha Ghidorah. But if the normal Ghidorah didn't get much of an audience to come watch King of the Monsters, then I doubt Legendary will ever make Ghidorah the big main threat again. And now the ones where it's pretty much impossible for them to show up in Supernova. Destroya and Orga. People have wanted Destroya in the Monsterverse ever since the Oxygen Destroyer was used, and the monster is one of Toho's most badass and famous villainous kaiju. But Destroya just doesn't make sense right now for the Monsterverse. He's kinda more of an endgame monster in my opinion. So this doesn't mean that his time ain't coming for the franchise, we may just have to wait longer. Finally, we have Orga. Now, there were some trying to say this kaiju had a chance to appear in Supernova, and yes, Orga does come from space, so there is that. But Orga is such a simple, almost basic monster that they could easily make a new Titan like Orga without all the red tape that comes with using a Toho creation. Right now, I just feel like there's a lot more other classic Titans that should make an appearance over Orga, so it's just not happening. So residents, that's my tier of Titans and monsters that could show up in Supernova. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it, subscribe, like the video, share it around, do all that YouTube stuff. It really does help in the end, and it'll show me to keep making more of these. On that note, go have a good one. I'll see you in the next one.